7 minutes of pure terror, no help from Earth possible, and a 1-ton robot falling toward Mars. This is how Perseverance stuck the landing. The word everyone was waiting for finally came through mission control. Touchdown. NASA Perseverance rover had safely landed on Mars, and within moments the very first images began arriving from the surface. As NASA and outlets like Space.com reported, it was the successful start of a mission to hunt for signs of ancient life on the Red Planet. Millions of people around the world had watched and waited together, because everyone knew that getting to this moment was anything but guaranteed. Landing on Mars is famously one of the hardest things in spaceflight, and the reason is the atmosphere. Mars has won, but it is extremely thin, only about 1% as dense as Earth's. That puts it in a cruel middle ground. It is too thin to slow a heavy spacecraft down the way our thick atmosphere does for returning capsules, yet it is thick enough that a craft screaming in at enormous speed still generates fierce heat and stress. You cannot ignore it, and you cannot rely on it, you have to fight it. Making it harder still, nobody on Earth can fly the landing. Mars is so far away that a radio signal takes many minutes to travel each direction. By the time engineers saw that the craft had entered the atmosphere, the whole landing was already over, one way or another. There is no joystick, no last-second correction from the ground. Everything has to be programmed in advance and executed by the spacecraft itself, alone in real time. It has to be its own pilot. This is why the final phase is nicknamed the 7 minutes of terror. In roughly 7 minutes, the spacecraft has to go from screaming through the upper atmosphere at thousands of kilometers per hour to a gentle stop on the surface. Thousands of individual steps, from firing the heat shield to deploying the parachute to the final maneuvers, all have to execute flawlessly and automatically. A single serious failure at any point, and the mission ends in a crater, and Earth can only watch the recording, arriving minutes late. The landing itself unfolds in stages, each handing off to the next. A heat shield takes the brutal friction of entry. A supersonic parachute deploys to bleed off more speed. Then comes the part that sounds like science fiction. A rocket-powered descent stage, essentially a hovering jetpack, takes over, slows to a near stop above the surface and gently lowers the rover on cables like a sky crane. Once the wheels touch down, the cables cut and the descent stage flies away to crash at a safe distance. It is audacious, and it works. All that difficulty is in service of a genuinely historic goal. Perseverance was sent to Jezero Crater, a site scientists believe once held a lake and a river delta, exactly the kind of place where ancient microbial life might have thrived billions of years ago. The rover studies the rocks for signs of that past life, and crucially, collects and seals samples. Those carefully cached samples are meant to be retrieved by a future mission and brought back to Earth, where our most powerful laboratories can examine them directly. Perseverance did not travel alone. Tucked beneath it was Ingenuity, a small experimental helicopter, and it would go on to achieve the first powered, controlled flight of an aircraft on another planet. Flying in that whisper-thin Martian air was itself a serious engineering challenge, and Ingenuity was a technology demonstration meant to prove it could be done at all. It vastly exceeded expectations, hinting at a future where flying scouts could survey terrain that ground-bound rovers can never reach. Beyond its own discoveries, this landing was a proving ground for the harder missions to come. The precision techniques that put Perseverance down safely are the same skills needed to eventually land the heavier hardware, and one day the people, that a human mission to Mars would require. Every successful landing sharpens the tools and builds the confidence. The sample caching work lays the groundwork for the first ever round trip to another planet's surface. This is not a one-off stunt. It is a deliberate step on a much longer road. The safe arrival of Perseverance is a monument to preparation and ingenuity. A 1-ton robot flew across tens of millions of kilometers, then landed itself perfectly on a hostile world with no help from home, using a rocket-powered sky crane and flawless autonomous software. Now it roams an ancient lake bed, quietly gathering the samples that may one day answer one of humanity's oldest questions, whether we have ever been alone. When we plan carefully and dare greatly, we can reach across the solar system and touch another world. Every Mars landing makes the next one, and eventually a human one, more possible. Follow orbit report to keep tracking our journey across the solar system.